It was, for me anyway, and I hope it was for the people who were listening, a fascinating discussion yesterday about congestion and Cape Town and solutions. And of the many thoughtful responses we got from listeners was a voice note from Derek asking if we had any updates on the redevelopment of the Bellville precinct as a secondary CBD and what that might do to take pressure off people having to travel into town. Joining us now is urban planner Marco Morgan, who works with GROWZA Think Tank, a non-profit that connects African growth opportunities with global development resources. Marco, good morning.
Morning, John. How are you doing?
I
Happy
am.
Diwali.
I'm. How are you doing?
Good, good.
You
Ready for the morning traffic to drop my kids at school as well, so I can do it.
good luck with that. Is there background work being done, foreground work being done? What is the state of this notion, or is it more than a notion? Is it a proposal? Is it beyond a proposal? Is it an actual plan to add Belleville as a more secondary CBD than it might serve the purpose as at the moment?
Yes, so I mean, for one, I think it's a lot more than a notion or a plan. It's gone through council and it was approved. So, and that's quite a big step in sort of advancing the sort of notion that Belleville will be a second economic node. And that approval means across the city, there's policy integration and what should be around sort of funding and resource allocation. And that sort of should put our sort of fears aside, whether there will be something that hits the ground. So there are plans in place. Yeah, the short answer is yes.
Okay, and how far away are those plans from? Well, let me ask what the kernel of the plans is. I mean, so you have this broad vision of not redeveloping. Yeah, I suppose it is redeveloping because I mean there is a kind of urban centre to Belleville. So what is the kernel of the plan to upgrade that to further develop it?
So I think, I mean, there's a number of sort of it's a phased implementation project, right? And what that means is that there's going to be a number of short and medium term phase developing Belleville CBD. I'm aware that there's a sort of a very strong focus around transport as this lever for activating the Belleville CBD, but it's not the only lever. So you have this plan sort of driven by the city of Cape Town, but because there's so many sort of stakeholders involved, it has to sort of leverage or catalyze what it could, and transport is one of them. So I mean, some early projects, there's some focus on road extensions, as well as sort of looking at the core and extended road proposals, and that's how to alleviate sort of congestion. And the city is quite focused around this, around alleviating congestion, but also starting to think about how does it focus around urban regeneration of that Belleville CBD. So those initial steps that we're speaking about is sort of getting the ground ready for investment, for sort of regeneration.
And there is the sense that there is investment in the pipeline waiting for the tap to be opened, if you'll excuse my sanitary metaphors.
No, 100%. And I think that that's the big focus, right? So what are these sort of catalytic investments from the city? And when we're speaking about that, I know there's a lot of talk about devolution of rail, but what this plan is focusing on is looking at sort of investing into the non-motorized transport plan and sort of getting Belleville CBD, sort of developing this complete streets approach. And that means making it a bit more easier for cars and pedestrians to exist within that space and safely exist within that space. There's also massive pipeline projects around sort of developing its public transport interchange. And we know that that involves a number of different stakeholders, but that's a key focus around improving its public transport interchange so that there's seamless travel in public transport. And that takes a lot of people off the roads. It allows for sort of freedom of movement or sort of flow of movement. And then we sort of speaking on the sort of big focus on transit orientated development, which gets that term gets thrown around a lot in plans, but essentially it's a mechanism of bringing people closer to this CBD and economic opportunities, and less reliance on a private vehicle to move from one place to the next. So it brings people closer, clusters everything together. So I think there's lots of movement towards this, and a reason to be optimistic about this as well.
I haven't been in what would be designated as the Belleville CBD probably for 15 years. My entirely ignorant vision of it is of a place which is not a great pleasure to visit. But there is a feeling that in 5 or 10 years' time, that Belleville will have its version of Bree Street and Long Street and so on, or is it seen to be rather a collection of glittering office spaces where people go to work, and then obviously there will be some leisure opportunities for them to shop and eat and drink and so on. What will this reimagined Belleville CBD look like? Processes never finish. That's the nature of processes. But what deep into this process?
So I think that's I mean, for what that reimagined Belleville CBD look like, it is an economic node. So it's not another version of the CBD, and I think it will take on its own identity, and that identity is sort of a lot of elements around sort of placemaking, a lot of focus around who's in that space and how that space will sort of accommodate them. A lot of focus around sort of non-motorized transport and public spaces, so optimization of places, and it builds a bit more of a way of being a lot more inclusive, and also economically strong as a CBD or as an economic node. So I think there's a lot of movement towards driving towards that focus. And I think that we must try to shift our minds from what we want to see as what might be a world-class city. So there's a lot of focus around what does a world-class city look like, and does it look like something in New York, or does it look like something in Amsterdam? And we forget that we are an African city. And so, what does an economic node look like, and what are those sort of beautiful aspects of an African city? And I think Belleville has the right ingredients to develop these things. And that's this reimagining of it is based a lot on this. So hats off to the city for sort of putting this plan together, um, and sort of crafting this amazing sort of reimagining of Belleville CBD. And it's not just, it's a number of stakeholders that sort of shaped it. But like you say, it's a plan, right? And a
Yeah.
plan needs to have some sort of action. I think where we as GROWZA are is rethinking is how do we sort of find those sort of puncture points, and how do we catalyze some of these things? And that means bringing people together, having best case sort of practices, and then also sort of uh, leveraging our stakeholders and our investments for driving this forward.
Thank you very much, Marco Morgan. Good luck with the school run this morning. Urban planner working for the GROWZA Think Tank.